Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here. Let me give you a chance, Mr. Secretary, to answer Senator Coons' question, which is a really simple one. How are we going to get the Strait open? Because nothing matters more to our constituents than doing something about these spiraling gas prices, which are bankrupting families and farmers all across the country. And maybe let me ask it this way. This is the first time you've come before this committee, but in other briefings, people that work for you have told us in plain terms that there is no military mechanism to reopen the Strait, that ultimately it will be a political decision made by Iran. And I think you're confirming that here today by suggesting that it will be economic pressure that will create a political imperative inside Tehran to open the Strait. So can you just confirm for the committee that there is not a military mechanism or means to reopen the Strait, that ultimately we have to essentially use diplomacy, economic diplomacy in this case, in order to convince Iran to make the decision to reopen the Strait?
I would say, Senator, there most certainly are military means by which we could open the Strait, both on targets on land and also with what we do with our naval capabilities, not to mention our naval blockade.
Why haven't you done, if that's true and that's not what has been testified to us in private briefings, why haven't you done that already?
Ultimately, a preferred long-term approach would be a deal where they open it up, where they stop being pirates of international waters and allow countries from all nations to flow. You know, these aren't U.S. ships that are being blockaded there. These are ships from all around the world, creating much more pressure for other countries than ours. So the bad guy here is Iran, who's closing the Strait through piracy effectively, because they really only have fast boat capabilities. We're blockading them. None of their stuff's getting out. They're feeling all the pressure.
Okay, here's my follow-up question. You don't worry that through a study of history, you might come to the conclusion that you are overestimating their willingness to cave based upon economic pressure. The Russians believed years ago that Ukraine would cave because of the economic pressure they were putting on Ukraine. We thought the North Vietnamese would cave because of the economic pressure we were putting on them. Your own intelligence estimates, as has been reported, suggest that, in fact, the Iranians are in a position to hold out for potentially years. This is a high-risk strategy to hope that this economic pressure will eventually cause them to voluntarily reopen the Strait when there's plenty of evidence from military history to show that countries that are being attacked or invaded or occupied are actually willing to put up with a whole lot of economic misery in order to preserve national pride.
Well aware. We understand all of those historical case studies, and it's not just economic pressure. There's military pressure, diplomatic pressure. We certainly have a lot more military pressure we can bring to bear if the president were to choose to do so. I think there are a lot of different dynamics cards that the president can play, holding all of them to ensure even greater economic pressure or even greater military pressure in Iran. And they know that, and that's why the negotiations are serious and ongoing right now about giving up their nuclear capability, because they understand.
And the problem is time is not on our side here. I believe you are being way too optimistic in your assessment of their potential to cave. But if this goes on for another 30 days, there are going to be thousands more farms that will go bankrupt. There are going to be families that are going to be ruined. And so time is not on our side. And I just don't believe that Iran is ready to capitulate yet. And if they capitulate in a year, there's going to be a whole lot of families and businesses that are ruined in the United States. General Caine, let me finally ask you a question about what seems to be a difference of opinion between the intelligence services that you rely on and the public statements of the President of the United States with respect to our war objectives. The Secretary and others in the President's cabinet have said very clearly that our war objective is to destroy Iran's missile and drone program. The President said just a week ago that Iran maybe had 18 to 19% of their missile capacity left. But there is public reporting suggesting that our intelligence agencies say that Iran still has 70% of their missile and drone capability, which would be a failure of our objectives if that were to be true. What can you tell us about the number of missiles and drones that they have left, and do you dispute that intelligence estimate?
Sir, I'm not going to comment, with deep respect for the question, I'm not going to comment in this forum on what may or may not have been opined on by the IC, which would suggest a leak or a confirmation of any intel. So while I appreciate the question, I hope you'll also appreciate my not answering it.
Well, then just give me what is the president said that 80% of.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on BDA on either way, sir.
Well, then how do we or the American public assess the success of the mission when you've stated publicly the purpose of the mission is to destroy their missile and drone capability? How do we assess whether we should continue funding this if you can't state?
Well, I'm not going to answer what you guys in the Congress considers the decision criteria around continued funding or not. What I know is that I've not read the report that you're talking about. All of our battle damage assessment matters are classified, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment in this forum on that. And I appreciate the question, but I'm not going to answer it.
Let me just put it to Secretary Hegseth. The president said that 80% of their missile capacity had been destroyed. This public report says it's only 30%. Can you give us an answer as to what the real number is?
I mean, I would answer the same way as the chairman.
Not talking to this committee about the damage assessment?
Not validating leaked information that could be wrong or not wrong. Why would I validate what people may leak or not leak? This is not a classified setting. We don't talk about those things. And you like to talk about them on TV. We don't talk about them here.
I would perhaps suggest that that some of these questions and responses are perhaps best in a classified setting.